Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome John Delane Williams.
Well, here I am. I'm a day late and several dollars short. I was scheduled to speak yesterday, but I didn't because I didn't know I was supposed to speak then. And problem with, I lost my Wi-Fi, so I had no access to emails till yesterday. And I found out. So they've rearranged it for now. I'm going to be speaking regarding Lee Harvey Oswald, and in particular in relationship to Ernst Titovets, who was his best friend in Russia. But I think we have to, before we do that, we have to get some lead up to that. And I'll start with his time in the Marines. He dropped out of high school as a 10th grader, actually in October, just after his 17th birthday. And he went to boot camp, and then he went to training and radar, went through 2 programs, and the second of which, now he was had gone through the 10th grade, and I don't know if he got a GED or not, but I don't think by that time he did. But he was allowed to go into these advanced courses. And in the second course, he finished 7th out of 30. And most of those people were generally all high school graduates. So he did very well. He was sent to Japan, where he worked at a base where that's where the U-2s took off from. And early on, he went to a bar called the Queen Bee and met this woman who wanted to know his secret stuff. And he reported that to the people back at the base. And they, by the way, he couldn't afford to do this. To date, one of these girls cost somewhere between $60 and $100, and he made $85 a month. And so they paid for it, for him to basically feed her lies. Well, among other things, he fell in love with her. And so he had not even reached his 18th birthday, and he had suddenly reached very successful points in his life and was in love with a beautiful woman. And that all was going to change, of course. But he also, when he was in Japan, he met Richard Case Nagel. And it's very well maybe Nagel who was convincing him to go to Russia. And so he came back to the United States. He was for a while after he finished his tour in I'll just say Japan. While there, he was in California, and he met with people. A woman that he met had been studying Russian, and Oswald seemed to be much more proficient in Russian than she was, and she was astonished by what he appeared to be, how good he appeared to be in Russian. And so he thought. He did then go to Russia, and one of the things he found out quite early was he may have been good in Russian for an American student, but he was not anywhere near being a native Russian speaker. And they thought he needed to be taught how to speak Russian. And they actually assigned tutors to him, and he had interest people trying to help him. So he could kind of converse in Russian with other Russians. Now, I became interested in this aspect because of what John Armstrong had said, is that Oswald, who was proficient in Russian, would never have spoken a word of Russian to anyone except perhaps Marina. Well, that turned out to be very untrue. In his book called Oswald Russian Episode, Ernst Titovets discuss at length their get-togethers, and in particular, language. Now, Titovets was a student in medical school at the time, and he was interested in Oswald as a Native American or Native English speaker, and the only speakers of English that they'd ever heard had learned their English from English people from the British Isles. And so he was the first actual Native American that he had ever encountered. And Oswald seemed also to be a cultured person, and Titovets thought he must have been a college graduate because he seemed to be very refined. They would go to various kinds of entertainment, but often it was opera or classical music, and he seemed to have some knowledge of that. And so that whole issue. Oh, when they were with a group of people, he would speak. If everybody there, if only one of them spoke English, they would speak English. But if there was no one, I'm sorry, if one of them didn't speak Russian, they would all speak English. If there was no one there that didn't speak English, but they also spoke Russian, they would speak Russian. And so he would typically speak Russian quite a bit, which kind of invalidates the idea that Armstrong had. Well, along the way, Oswald, one of the things is he was kind of surprised that his Russian really didn't compare well to the other people who spoke Russian. And so he diligently went about trying to learn Russian better. Actually, the Soviet government provided a person to teach him Russian, which didn't work very well. The guy had a PhD in a science field, but he wasn't a very good teacher of Russian. So he kept, the tourist guides helped him, and there were other people that helped him.
Hello.
Is this the famous Mal Hyman?
No,
This isn't Mal Hyman?
no.
I'm sorry to bother you.
Okay. Anyway, there's a lot of things going on.
Lord, Pete Hymas, mute your mic, please.
I'm not sure what's going on here.
You're okay. You're fine now. Someone didn't have their mic mute, but you've got the floor now.
Oh, okay. I have my own floor here in my house. Anyway, Oswald's other part of his life, besides learning Russian, was early on. He met a girl. Her name was something German, and she fascinated him, and he seemed to go after her in the sense that He would walk her places, but it was a very slow romance. And but apparently he was falling in love with her, and he had to make a decision in January 2000, not 2000, 1961, as to whether he wanted to seek Russian citizenship or return back to the United States. And he proposed to her at Christmas time, 1960, and she turned him down. Apparently, she thought it would be too difficult to be married to an American citizen, even if he no longer had citizenship. And she saw it as simply not something that she should do. So Ella was her first name, Ella German. And in January, he decided to come back to the United States. But of course, there would be the period of time of arranging that. And but he had gone with Titovets to all sorts of places nearby, and they would often go to the college or university where they would meet with young girls, and of course he was kind of a fascination because he was an American citizen, and he spoke English in a way they never heard, and probably not the way many of us hear it either. He was from New Orleans, and he had a Southern accent, and actually his accent was more a Cajun accent than just Southern. And so in any event, he was kind of a person that they looked forward to. And they also there was a fellow worker whose last name was Ziegler, who had two daughters, and he invited Oswald to the house. But he told Oswald, you speak English, we speak Russian, so when you're here, we'll all speak English. And when he was with just the girls, he could speak Russian, but not to be told to their father. So from their perspective, he mainly spoke English because the father forbid him to speak Russian. And it was one of the daughters who became an informant to John Armstrong. And she said, honestly, no, he didn't speak Russian when he came to our house, and which was true. So that fit his hypothesis, but it was unhelpful for the truth. Well, he met Marina at a dance, and there was also a presentation before that, and the dance took place after the presentation. And they had a kind of a fast romance. Well, it didn't last. He had I can't remember if it was an illness or something like that, but he spent time in the hospital for the second time. And they got married shortly, about a month after they met. And they stayed in Russia till sometime in 1962 when they finally came back. The youngest girl, their first daughter, had already been born, and they came back to the United States. So anyway, the issue, well, I don't know that it's relevant, but Oswald's temperament, I think his time in Russia was one, he thought, I'm guessing, seemingly he thought that one, they treated him quite well, but this wasn't a place that he wanted to come back to the U.S. In fact, there was a group of people that went there from a musical group went there from Michigan State, and he made a point of going up and meeting them and telling them that he was actually an American living in Russia. So he had a real interest in returning to the United States, but he seemingly got along well with the Russians that he knew, and he had a job in a radio factory, and I don't know that it was all that important, although it was called classified work there. He wouldn't get together when they would do exercises and things. That wasn't something that he was interested in. And he did go hunting, but I guess that was kind of a bust too. He just wasn't a good shot. And that had actually been true when he went through boot training. He barely qualified to be a sharpshooter, and he had to do it more than once. But in any event, his time in Russia seemed to be one that he enjoyed the people there, enjoyed the things, the very few things he could do there, but he got very good pay. It was 1,400 rubles, which now would be nothing. But then it was about the equivalent of what a person who might be a supervisor at the radio factory might get, rather than just a simple employee. So but he thought, I have all this money and nowhere to spend it. And he missed what was available in the United States. And at that point, he chose to come back. And much of it, well, the some of the things that aren't well known are his relationship to Richard Case Nagel. Nagel became an important part of his, for at least for a while, very important part of his life. He saw him, I believe, twice in Mexico and once in some other place. And Nagel referred to it as not Houston. So someplace other than Houston. But also they got together in New Orleans. Nagel came to New Orleans. And I think that's when Nagel found out what was going on with Oswald in New Orleans. He was working at, his real job was to help develop he didn't do much with helping develop, but he was working with people who were developing a fast-acting cancer that could be used on Castro. And so his job really was to carry them from one person to another as they did whatever they were going to do. But his final job was to take the, when they had something that was very effective, to take it to Mexico and hand it to a particular person at a particular place who was a Cuban, and they would take it back to Cuba and use it on Castro. And that was to take place in, they had it fully developed in roughly the early part of September, around the 10th or so. And plans were made to take it to Mexico City, in somewhere around the 23rd or so of September. And when he got there, unfortunately, he was unable to deliver it because the person never showed up. The person that was supposed to show up was a medical person and they were expecting a hurricane coming through Cuba, so they were not allowed to leave. And that essentially put the killing of Castro by the use of this poison never took place. And he came back. He went to a meeting in Dallas, I believe on 7th of September, 7th of, this was before he went to Mexico. He went to Dallas, where he met with two other people, one of whom was a CIA person, and the other was, I believe, a Cuban also. But and this is widely reported, and then I also reported in my book, the Lee Harvey Oswald and then Johnson and the JFK assassination. And one of the persons who saw this, and I actually spoke to at least Oswald, was a guy named Wynn Johnson, who I guess he's actually involved with the conference this year. So he's a person I've been in contact with for the last several months. But Nagel went to New Orleans, and he saw what Oswald was doing. His job was to kill Oswald. And he decided he's in the same situation as I am, that is to say, Nagel, and he's being used by the CIA to, in this case, they want the guy dead, or they're going to allow the guy to be. They want to have him killed, actually. And particularly Russia wanted him killed because they didn't want him to have anything to do with the assassination. But Nagel, after meeting with Oswald, went back to, he was in El Paso, and he sent Oswald a letter with tickets to, airline tickets to Mexico and $500. And of course, or not of course, but Oswald never received that letter at any point ever. And probably it was intercepted by postal inspectors or someone. And it never got to Oswald. But after doing that, Nagel then went to a bank, walked in with a gun, and he didn't actually he just shot into the ceiling and then walked out and sat in his car. And it took a while for somebody to even come by to find him. And he admitted to, yes, I did those things. He thought it would just be a misdemeanor because he never shot at anyone. He didn't realize to carry a gun into a bank and then shoot it was a felony. And he was, in fact, sent to prison. So that's the end of the relationship with Oswald. But having done that, he knew that whatever happened, if Oswald were killed or the president was assassinated, he would be in jail, and there would be no way that people could point fingers at him. So anyway, and of course, when Oswald was in New Orleans, he met Judith, and but she's probably, you've read that story, you've heard that story, you've asked her questions, and you can see that she truly loved him. And I think probably I should be kind of slowing down here a bit and see if there are any questions. And I can't see your hands or anything.
Can you hear us?
I can hear you.
Okay, one question asked in the chat room is they were making a cancer report to Fidel Castro. Do you know what type of cancer? Was it skin, organ, bone? Do you know what type of cancer?
I'm pretty sure it was internal. It surely wasn't a skin cancer. It was to be a fast-acting cancer that would kill him quick. By the way, one of the persons that they met there, and Judith met with him as well, is Jack Ruby. And Jack Ruby came to New Orleans and was involved insofar as he was helping support this effort. So he knew all about this effort to kill Castro, and he knew about the fast-acting cancer. Now, as you might recall, Ruby was finally to be released because they had overturned his verdict of guilty of killing Oswald, and he was to be released from prison. Well, before that could happen, a physician came in and vaccinated him with something, and then within a few weeks, Ruby developed cancer and died a couple of weeks later. So I don't know what type of cancer it was, other than, and maybe Judith might know, I don't know if she's there, but I think it was basically a fast-acting internal cancer. Might have, I don't know where it would focus on, but it was internal.
Okay, Ms. Baker's coming over here to ask a question.
Well,
Sure.
Right here.
Just in case someone missed my presentation a little while ago, this internal cancer was because it was derived from, it was a lung cancer, and by injecting it into the bloodstream, Jack Ruby knew that you don't usually inject any ordinary anything into the bloodstream, so he understood when he was injected that he was getting this stuff. He knew about that. And of course, if it's not taken in the bloodstream, interestingly enough, we had worked on this a year before I got involved. And they had problems with species stress. Couldn't get it to go from mouse to monkey, or from monkey to human. So anyway, we fixed that by compromising the immune system with lots of X-rays. And of course, junior X-ray. People, when you get an X-ray, you have to hope the technician way up the
Okay, I didn't hear that very well. It was, I think you're asking a question about something about the bloodstream with cancer. Is that right?
Yes, Judith was mentioning the type of cancer it was and how the immune system was weakened to compromise and it be able to pour it into the body better.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, I would take what she said. I was never aware of the specific kind of cancer, and I don't think she reported that in her book. Maybe she did, but I didn't get it. It could have been pancreatic, for example, which is actually is a very quick cancer. And
Mr. John Delane Williams, I have a little information on him, so a little background, because he didn't want to brag on himself. But he has a wealth of knowledge because he is an American statistics educator, a licensed psychologist, Minnesota, North Dakota, and a certified teacher and professor emeritus, and a gerontologist. He's recipient of the Burlington Northern Outstanding Service Award and Teaching Award from the University of North Dakota in 1986. He's a member of APA, American Statistical Association, Educational Research Association, Sigma Pi Outstanding Individual Research Award. And his book is titled From 2019, November of 2019, Lee Harvey Oswald and Lyndon Johnson. It's 336 pages and available through Trine Day. Are there any other questions for Mr. Williams? How much more time do we have?
Probably about 10 minutes, I think.
10 minutes? We got lots of questions.
Okay.
This is a guy to ask of. Do you happen to know what happened with Mr. Nagel? Can you hear me, Mr. Williams?
Yes, he died around 1995. And a lot of things happened to him. He was actually in 2 plane wrecks, and I believe he was the only survivor of both. So that was when he was in the service. And then he was married to a Japanese lady, I think, and they broke up. And he lived in Los Angeles in an apartment by himself. And I think he just died of.
How much time he got for the bank robbery in order to avoid being involved?
I think he got 8 years, and I think he served about 6.
And was he an agency man or?
Well, he was like Oswald. He was kind of like a contract employee, and he wasn't. In other words, the CIA has those professionals who work for them, and they're CIA employees, and then people like Nagel or Oswald would be, I think, what they call agents, and they're contract agents, and they get paid as a particular contract would pay them. And they may be on for a long time, or they may be for one short period. And it's, I think, fairly clear that Oswald was both working for the FBI and the CIA. When he was in New Orleans, a FBI agent would drive up, I think it was once a month, but it could have been once a week, I don't remember. And he would be standing on the sidewalk and they would give him an envelope with money. And it probably wasn't accounted for other than by some secondary accounting procedure.
And another question, Ed, you had mentioned you're working and talking with Wynn Johnson, who presented earlier today.
Yeah.
This is Channel Willis, and I'm curious as to what got you piqued in this topic. Was it your study of statistics or the event itself?
Oh, okay. That's, well, actually, from day one, I was hooked. I had, when he was shot, I went down to lunch where I was teaching at that time in a junior college, and I heard that he was shot in Dallas. And anyhow, I went to, it was the 4th Thursday of the month, and that was our payday. So I went down to the bank and was standing in line to deposit my paycheck when I heard Cronkite say, "The president is dead." And it's like one of those things you're never going to forget. So that weekend, I lived on a busy street in Rock Springs, Wyoming, and people came over. It was a small junior college. We had about 12 faculty, and at least 9 of them were at my apartment. And this went on. They were there Friday night, Saturday night. It was 2 a.m. It was actually Sunday morning. And not that I knew anything, but I've been watching things. I thought, those people there are really kind of, looks like they're going to shoot Oswald. And so I said, well, Oswald was going to be dead within 24 hours. And so I became the great predictor because I was just trying to get the people out of my apartment. It was 2 o'clock in the morning. And
The unusual merge of your expertise as a licensed psychologist predicting that and merging with statistics.
yeah,
In your opinion and your professionalism.
yeah.
do
You want to know
know,
how many other things I got right like that?
How many
Zero.
bullets you think flew in the air that day?
What was that?
How many bullets flew in the air that day?
Bulletins or actually I went to church and I got home and I said, I got to get home to watch the assassination of Oswald. And so that was yet another one. And by God, I got home and about 10, 12, 15 minutes later, he was coming down and he was shot. And then everyone thought I was
Yes,
really,
ma'am.
I knew something.
Nagel had some papers in the back of his car when he was arrested. What happened to those papers?
Nagel had some papers in the back of his car when he was arrested. Do you know what happened with those papers?
No. If it's not in the book, the man who knew too much, that's really my biggest base of, and I've actually I have both editions of that, and when I refer to it, I believe it's a 2010 edition or 2002 edition, whatever it is, the newer book, and actually I presented with him, Dick, what's his last name? Dick Russell. I presented with him at the JFK conference there in 2019. And so I had presented a paper on Nagel and Oswald. And that was published in the Dealey Plaza Echo 2020.
Any other
Go ahead.
concluding questions? All right. Thank you, Mr. Williams. We certainly appreciate you participating in the conference.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, John Delane Williams. Yes, thank you, John. Sorry about the mix up on your introduction. I'm glad Shannon was able to give you a proper one.
Okay, well, thank you.
All right.